Hello, my dear friend. Welcome to another episode of the Reflective Parenting Podcast. My name is Cindy Hovington, and I am your host. I am a mom of three from Montreal, Canada, and I have a Ph.D. in neuroscience. And my goal here is not to help you learn how to parent. It's a parenting podcast for parents. That's the whole point of what we do here at Curious Neuron. And so if you're looking for a space that's going to help you learn how to not even work on yourself, but discover who you are, understand what your needs are, how to show up for yourself, and how to control yourself in moments when your child can't control themselves, then you're at the right place. Today, we're talking about the lenses we sometimes wear and how these lenses can shift our perspective in a situation, can dysregulate us, or even lead us to reacting rather than responding. And so, if that's something that you can relate to, then stay tuned, and I'm going to be talking about all of that today. First, I'd like to thank the Tannenbaum Open Science Institute for supporting the Curious Neuron podcast, as well as the McConnell Foundation. Both of these organizations have supported the podcast for many years now, and not only is it because of them that this podcast still exists, but it's because of you. And so thank you for listening. I love it when you write to me, when you let me know what you're enjoying, how this podcast has supported you. And so if you want to say hi, send me an email at info@curiousneuron.com. That is my email. Every once in a while, I get an email and it means a lot to me. And so I always put my email out there. But also, if there's a topic you'd like me to cover, or if you want to record a 1-minute audio to say hi, to ask a question, to share a struggle that you're having that you'd like me to talk about on the podcast, have a look at the show notes. There is a SpeakPipe link. It's a link that you can record your voice for 1 minute. You don't even have to say your name, but you can say hi. Let me know where you're from if you want. You can tell me if you're a parent of how many kids. If you just want to say hi or share a question, go ahead. And so today, I really wanted to focus on something that keeps coming up with parents inside the Reflective Parent Club. And we often talk about the lenses we wear. And so I was like, well, maybe I need to really expand on that. And maybe there's room to record a podcast episode. And as you know, any podcast episode, like let's say you're listening to this week and you're like, yeah, I relate to this, then I really recommend you take advantage of you get 7 days free inside the Reflective Parent Club, because what we do is we dig deeper. So every week for 1 hour, we meet as a group of parents. There are moms and dads from all around the world, 20 plus countries now. Some are chatting and doing the course, working on that at their own pace, and some are joining the weekly calls. And what we do is we take the podcast episode and we dig deeper as a group, as a community, and we take time to think about how it relates to us. And if you're somebody who's like, you would never find me joining a community to talk about my problems, that's okay. I hear you. I see you. You don't have to turn your camera on. You can just have your notebook in front of you and schedule this 1 hour a week to pause and to think about and reflect, which is why it's called the Reflective Parent Club, and to think about how these topics that we're talking about here in the podcast relate to you. And this helps you build your self-awareness. Parents inside the Reflective Parent Club have noticed a change in not just how they're parenting, how they show up for themselves, their level of stress, how their feelings of overwhelm have decreased, the impact it's had on their relationship, and managing stress of life. And so come join us. All right. So, like I said, sometimes we get stuck in these situations where I find that we can very quickly move on to, get stuck, sorry, not move on, but get stuck on using a lens that we have that doesn't help us in the situation. So, let me give you a bit of an example. Maybe you can relate to one of these two, right? So let's just say that your child is refusing to get dressed. You're already late for work. They refuse to get dressed. Maybe the default lens that you have in that moment is one of control, and you've lost control, and you're saying like, I can't get them to do this. And that's really frustrating. And so you can feel that it's a failure because you just can't get your child to get dressed. Or you can even think like, this child is trying to make me late. Like they're trying to piss me off right now. And all parents have fallen into this in some moment or other. And it's normal because we're overwhelmed. We have so much to do. And so learning how to shift that lens, we're going to go through all the lenses, and also I'm going to be saying them out loud, but if you want to see them so that you can journal about it, I'll give you a reflection prompt later on. I want you to, you don't have to join the Reflective Parent Club. I want you to have one or two prompts that you can work on on your own. But I have a blog post that is out on curiousneuron.com. The link to that blog post is in the show notes. And so you can do a bit of the work on your own. But if you want me by your side as you're doing this work, then you can join the Reflective Parent Club. So imagine that lens that we just spoke about, that default lens of control of like, I can't get this done. I'm not able to control the situation right now. And so I feel overwhelmed and stressed. If you were to shift it to a curiosity lens, what would be going on in your mind is, what might be making this hard for my child right now? What are they struggling with? Have I dysregulated them in this moment by saying, we're going to be late, we're going to be late, which is something that we had a beautiful moment of insight with one of our parents. This was many months ago. Rather than saying, come on, hurry up, we're going to be late, we can say, let's try to be on time today. Come on, let's try to be on time. That totally shifts how the nervous system perceives what you're saying to your child and their environment. Remember, the nervous system is constantly scanning the environment to know, am I safe? Do I need to shift into fight or flight mode? So that's one example of shifting a lens and the impact it's going to have. Here's another example. Maybe you messaged your partner in the morning and they didn't respond to you. You can have a default lens of, they're ignoring me, or I guess I'm not important, right? And so it could be like I'm shaming myself already, or it's like a threat lens. I guess I'm not important. They're ignoring me. But you can shift this to a boundary or a compassion lens. And you can say, well, maybe they're overwhelmed right now with work and they're really busy. Maybe I'll just let them know, rather than saying, call me. I can say, hey, I just need to talk to you for 5 minutes. I need to ask you something about tonight's schedule with soccer. You've given them more context, and say, when you have a moment, let me know. Just call me. There's a difference. But it's interesting because as I was trying to think of examples, these are things that people have told me, people close to me, or the moments that I've been in, even the one with the parent that I just gave you and the child refusing to get dressed. It is so easy to go to our default lenses. And so that's why I really want us to think about what that looks like for us and to think about how it impacts us. Let's use this one. This is the last example. You are at a party with family members, and one of your family members, an aunt or an uncle, criticizes your parenting in front of the others. You can have your default lens of resentment, or like, they always do this to me. I hate it when they do this to me. But you don't speak up. You don't say anything. Or you can shift this to more of a self-leadership lens. And you say, well, how do I want to show up for myself and my child right now? This is what you think. And so you act accordingly. Whenever we shift our lenses, it shifts how we react or respond in that situation. And so it's truly important for us to remember to pause. When we pause, it allows us the time to think. And a pause isn't 5 minutes. A pause is 3 seconds. I've said this before. This is another thing we practice inside the Reflective Parent Club. But when you pause, you can take a moment to show up for yourself. You can say, this is hard. And just by saying that, you're validating your own experience. And what we've learned from Carolyn Fleck, who was on the podcast a few weeks ago, I'll put that episode back in the show notes because that is how important that episode was on validation. Saying something like, this is hard, is enough to be like, yeah, that's why this sucks. That's how we show up for ourselves. And so I truly encourage you, that deep breath. I know that there's research around breathing, and we've spoken with people. Tatiana Graham was one of them here many months ago, maybe even more than a year ago. I know that it's important for us to take deep breaths, and that in itself is very regulating. But for me, that one deep breath is a pause. And when we learn how to pause in a moment where we just want to yell and lose our absolute minds, that pause allows us to do what we need to do for ourselves. It allows us to show up for ourselves. And when we show up for ourselves, it makes the situation a little less stressful, a little less overwhelming, and not as dysregulating. But if we don't know how to show up for ourselves, then that's where the work has to begin, which is why it is everything that we talk about, whether it's part of the Curious Neuron, platform, whether you go on our website at curiousneuron.com and you read our blog posts, if you follow us on Instagram at curious_neuron, or if you listen to this podcast, everything that I'm doing and all the research that I want to share with you and that I want you to reflect on, which is why we changed the name of this podcast from Curious Neuron to the Reflective Parenting Podcast, is because as a society, as parents, we consume so much content. You're consuming right now. You are. I'm part of the problem. But we consume so much content. So let's have a look at the different lenses that we can use so that we can be more mindful of it in the moment. And it's going to take time. I don't want you to set yourself up for failure. Okay, let's be clear here. I truly don't want you to set yourself up for failure. I want you to have an idea of what these lenses are. And for those of you that are listening and that are part of the Reflective Parent Club, I'm going to be putting them up in a post. You're going to have all the reflection prompts, a special activity for this week. And we're going to talk about it inside the club on Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, Montreal time, or 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm just going to read through them right now. So there could be the threat lens. I'm being attacked. And by the way, these 10 lenses that I'm going to share right now might be our, what do we call them? The patterns that we have, right? Like the ones that we automatically go to. Why can't I think of the word default? There we go. There's the word. I'm not editing this podcast, so we're going to keep that in. Default. When we have our default lenses, we just have to start noticing, which is why I encourage you, my dear parent, to take 2 minutes every single night to reflect, to think about, how did your day go? Where was there room for improvement? What could you have done or said differently? If you just get into the habit of doing that, you don't even have to use a pen and paper. You can just think about it before you go to bed. And if you want to write about it, that's a bonus. You'll have proof in front of you. And so take a moment to think back. But these are the 10 lenses that we sometimes have as the default lens that are unhelpful. They lead us to being more reactive and feeling more triggered. The threat lens. So that's, I'm being attacked. This can happen when your partner says you didn't take the garbage out. This can happen when your child says, no, I'm not going to take a bath. This can happen when your boss says, or your manager says, I really don't like the way you did this project. You have to redo it. Okay, so that's the first one, the threat lens. The control lens. I need to be right. I need to be in charge. I need to feel in control right now, and I don't. That can lead to us being dysregulated. The victim lens. Why is this happening to me? That can happen in many situations. This victim lens can show up as a parent. It could show up as a partner. It could show up as a child, right? Our parents, we talk to them. It's like, why me? There's so many reasons. So that's the victim lens. The shame lens. I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. And notice that what I'm linking to the lens are our thoughts. Because that's how we're going to catch our lens, by truly being tuned in to our thoughts. Then there's the blame lens. This is your fault. That's their fault, not mine. I blame them. So no matter what the person tells you, you don't care. It's their fault. You have the blame lens on. The fix-it lens. I need to solve this problem now. Sometimes this leads to not validating. I see this in couples. I work with parents privately, and I see moms and dads inside the Reflective Parent Club. Sometimes your partner comes up to you and just wants to talk about something, vent about someone. But some of us go into immediate fix-it lens or mode, right? We want to solve it rather than just listen to them. And then that can lead to a fight. The perfection lens. I shouldn't feel this way, or this shouldn't be happening. I can do better, right? There are different ways that we can show up that way with the perfection lens. This is not good enough. The resentment lens. You always do this to me. The comparison lens. Others don't struggle the way I do. And the fear lens. Something bad is going to happen. And again, these might be our patterns. They might be our default, and you have to be aware of them. Here's how we can shift it. You can shift to a curiosity lens. What's going on here? What's really going on here? The compassion lens. We're both humans that are struggling. This can be a lens that you shift to a moment with your child. If we go back to that moment, that example that I gave you with your child, they can be struggling in the moment because they feel overwhelmed. Guess what? You probably feel overwhelmed too. So imagine in that moment where you feel, I don't know, maybe you're going into the victim lens. Why is this happening to me? Why does this happen to me every morning? And your child's screaming and they don't want to put their socks on. And all of a sudden you switch it to the comparison lens and you say, wow, both of us are struggling this morning. You notice how in that moment you are no longer, how can I say this? You're both struggling. And so now you feel a bit of empathy, like, I'm struggling and so are you. I get it. This is hard. I hate mornings. It's so hard to leave on time. I get it. Another lens is the self-leadership lens. How do I want to show up in this moment? Then there's the humility lens. I may not be seeing the full picture right now. I need more details. Imagine in a situation where you're with your partner, where you shift to that humility lens and you're like, okay, I don't think I'm getting it. I don't think I'm seeing the full picture. Can you give me more detail? I need to understand what you're going through right now. Imagine how that can shift a conversation. Was it last week inside the Reflective Parent Club? I think we were talking about, partners and parenting. And we were talking about shifting the language that we use in an argument and how that can quickly de-escalate an argument. And so that humility lens can make a big difference. And then there's the growth lens that I love personally. What can I learn from this? There's the empathy lens. How might this person be feeling in the situation? Just kind of like a compassion lens. There's a big picture lens. Will this matter in a year? I love this one because most probably things that matter to us right now in a way that's causing conflict or making us feel uncomfortable or stressed will not matter next year. And so it's important for us to remember that. The repair lens, and I'm not talking about repairing a thing, I'm talking about repairing a relationship. And so what we have to think about with the repair lens is, what can I do to repair or restore this connection with this person? Because you might see that the person is really struggling. Maybe you had on the resentment lens and you haven't noticed that this person is struggling too. And then the last one is the self-compassion lens, not the compassion lens. We went through that. We have the empathy lens. But the self-compassion lens means that you're going to say things to yourself like, it's okay to feel this way. And I'm reading right now the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And for those of you that are in the membership in the Reflective Parent Club, in August, the last 2 weeks of August, we will be talking about that book in different ways. I will not, by the way, for those of you listening to the podcast, be publishing podcast episodes the last 2 weeks of August. I will be taking a break and a vacation with the family and relaxing. And so there will not be any podcast episode, but the Reflective Parent Club continues. And so I'm going to take the insights that I've taken from this book. And the reason why I'm saying this out loud is because that self-compassion lens brings me back to a phrase, we can do hard things, where she realizes that the we is the compassion piece. And that when you're in a hard moment and you say, we can do hard things, in a moment that is really, really hard, where you might feel really sad, it's kind of like what Dr. Kristen Neff talks about. When you open it up to the world and realize, I'm not the only one going through this. I don't know somebody personally going through this, but I know that somebody else in this world is going through this. And so I don't feel alone as I did before, because we can do hard things. And so it's the same, the self-compassion piece. It's okay to feel this way, opening it up a little bit more and saying we can do hard things. I think, is a lens that allows you to get through very difficult times. If you can move forward next week, or this week, sorry, now that you listen to this podcast, and the next couple of days, just be aware of your lenses. What are your default lenses? Maybe you can catch yourself in moments. Maybe not in the moment this week. Maybe that'll be next week. Maybe you can catch yourself in retrospect, right? After the moment happens, you're like, oh, wow, I hadn't even realized that I had the resentment lens on with this argument with my partner. I think I need to journal about that, or I think I need to talk to them about that. Or how often is this resentment lens showing up in any situation with my partner? These lenses, and when we have this concept of these lenses, it allows us to know or see moments that lead us to feeling threatened or shamed or like a victim. It dysregulates us and we don't show up in the way that we want to. And so, even in situations with our kids, it is so easy to go to our default lenses and then we don't show up in the way that we want. But if we continue this cycle without doing anything, it's going to be really hard to make a difference. Here's something that you can do that might help you this week or next week if you want. But taking a moment to take one situation, you can use these questions to journal, or you can use these questions to think about as you're walking. So think about a situation in the past week that led to an interaction that made you feel emotionally charged or felt very difficult for you, maybe uncomfortable for you. Go back into the lenses. So you don't have to listen to the podcast. You could click the link in the show notes that's going to bring you to the blog. The blog is going to have all the lenses, or you can listen to this on YouTube or listen to this on your podcast, whichever one you want. And take a moment to go through all the lenses. What lens was I wearing at that moment? Can you find the lens that you had? How did that lens affect how I felt and responded in that moment? Truly be honest with yourself. If you had the resentment lens on and you said certain things, or you thought certain things, or you acted a certain way, write it down. Be honest with yourself. And then here's the switch. What lens could I have chosen instead? Maybe it's the curiosity lens, maybe the compassion lens. What could you have done differently? What can you have chosen? Which lens? And the last question is, how might that shift have changed the outcome or helped you stay regulated in that situation? To me, this is the most powerful question of the 5, because I want you to see the impact that it could have on the situation that you were in. And so hopefully, writing out these answers, thinking about these, reflecting on these, are going to lead to you seeing the impact that that shift in lens can have on you in your relationship, in how you parent, in how you show up in interactions with others. But most importantly, as everything that we do here for this podcast and inside the Curious Neuron platform, it is how you show up for yourself. Nobody else will show up for us in a loving, compassionate way, in the way that we can. We need to learn how to show up for ourselves. You need to learn how to show up for yourself in this moment. And I know that when you start learning how to do this, moments that originally felt difficult, stressful, and overwhelming will not feel as difficult, stressful, and overwhelming. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope you enjoyed the reflection prompts. If you are somebody who listened to this and said, you know what, I can reflect on these, but I truly need a community, somebody to do this with. I need my self-discovery to be done with a group of people who are doing the same thing, who can say we can do hard things together. Then come join the Reflective Parent Club. Try it out for a week for free. Come join one of our weekly calls. Take a look at the course. It covers 4 domains of emotional intelligence, which allows you to build your self-awareness, self-regulation, build your relationship with your child, and your relationship with your partner. And even if you don't have a partner, we have some single parents. It'll help you prepare for the next relationship that you will be in, to show up as a version of yourself in the way that you've always envisioned. It's not about creating a better version of you. It's a different version. It's a more self-aware version. And that is what is going to make you that better version. And we can use the word better if you want, but that version of you will lead to you becoming a better parent for your child. Thank you for being here. I hope you have a wonderful and a beautiful week. I will see you next Monday. And for those of you listening from the club, because now I'm starting to say that because there are many more people, and most of you joining the Reflective Parent Club are from this podcast. And so I will see you at the next weekly call. Oh, before I forget, we had our first monthly free webinar last week. And we are going to have another one on August 12th. This time, it's going to be a webinar that's going to teach you or help you understand what dysregulation is and what it might look like for you and how it shows up for you. And so if you'd like to join this free webinar, it's going to be about 45 minutes. You can click the link below in the show notes that gives you access to register for our free webinars. And if you are a clinic, a preschool, or a daycare listening to this, as of September, maybe October, at one point I'm going to switch. These webinars are going to be available to our partners only. And so if you want parents that are parents of your clinic, if you have a pediatric clinic and you want to start nurturing the parents, it doesn't matter if you're a SLP clinic, a medical clinic, a OT clinic, PT clinic, you support the kids and we here at Curious Neuron support the parents. Let's work together. We will give you access to these free webinars. I'll send you a poster that has a QR code that you can hang in your clinic and tell parents, hey, I know you need support. It's not what we do, but it's what Curious Neuron does. You can send me an email at info@curiousneuron.com and I will send you the link to that. But for parents now, if you want to join the next one on August 12th, click the link in the show notes and join. I'll see you next time.